phone and everybody's gone. And I forget somebody's coming on, and I go, should I make somebody else and I go again?
Good evening, everyone. Before I call this meeting to order, I will ask everyone to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. We'll do the same. And remind council that the use of cell phone and electronic communications is prohibited during council meetings under our procedure bylaw. It is 6:30 p.m. I will call this meeting to order by acknowledging that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, now of Alderville, who have been stewards of the lands and waters that we now know as Brighton for generations. We recognize and respect their enduring connection to this place, which is governed under the Williams Treaties 1923. By acknowledging this traditional territory, let us also commit ourselves to hearing the truths and working toward reconciliation. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council approve the October 16th, 2023 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to declare on item 8.1, a gift from the heart is a tenant of mine.
Thank you. Any others? And I have two announcements this evening, and I'm going to move to the podium to make them. So if you have any announcements, I will ask for them in a moment. First announcement is about Local Government Week and Mayor for the Day. To help celebrate and acknowledge Local Government Week, the municipality engaged local youth to apply to be Mayor for the Day. On this past Friday, we hosted this year's Mayor for the Day, Krippa Thomas. Krippa, would you please join me up front, please? Krippa joined us and was sworn into office before touring the municipal facilities here at 35 Alice Street in Public Works and Planning, the Fire Department Station 1, and the King Edward Park. Come on over. The King Edward Park facilities. She then helped us celebrate a new business with the official grand opening and ribbon cutting at Northumberland Fine Foods. Krippa is a Brighton resident and a international baccalaureate student at Coburg Collegiate Institute. Krippa, thank you for joining us. And Krippa said she didn't want to say anything. You sure? Last chance. Thank you very much. My second announcement is with regard to a municipal staff person. Mr. Magee, would you please join me up front? Alan is our bylaw enforcement officer, as most of you know, and he has completed 2 official designations on behalf of the municipality. So I'm going to get Alan up here and I'm going to present him with certificates that I think he probably had to give to the clerk for me to present to. So he's already seen these, but that's okay. Just officially, Alan has completed the Municipal Law Enforcement Officer Certified designation. That must have been a big deal. The Municipal Bylaw Enforcement Certification designation. Yeah. And the Certified Property Standards Officer designation.
I just want to say thank you to Brighton for the opportunity to take these courses. I also want to thank some of the staff members around me that contribute to my success. Candace being one of them when she was my boss for a while, or supervisor. Paul, Jim, and Linda. I've worked with them for the last 9 years, and they've been very supportive. And any courses I wanted to take. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other announcements this evening? Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley.
Thank you. So on October the 5th, I was pleased to represent Mayor and Council at the installation of Mr. Mark Kirkpatrick, new President of Loyalist College.
And you were at an event, and thank you for that, but you were at an event this weekend as well.
Yes, I was. I was part of a panel at the first annual Northumberland Expo for Women. I was one of 4 female politicians in the county, and it was a well put together event. I was pleased to attend.
We thank you for that one as well. Any other announcements? Brings us to the adoption of the minutes. It's moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council adopt the September 28th, 2023 special council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that Council adopt the October 2nd, 2023 council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. A motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that Council adopt the October 10th council planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no public meeting this evening, which brings us to our presentations. Council will hear 2 presentations this evening. Presenters have 15 minutes to provide council with their information. It is noted that language, content, and conduct must always remain respectful. Council will be provided with an opportunity to ask questions of clarification from the presentation representatives based on the information that they have presented. Council is reminded that this is not an opportunity to engage in debate with the presenters nor advance a public policy position. Presenters are reminded that Council does not make decisions during the presentation portion of this evening's meeting. And our first presentation comes from Bev Woods, Gift from the Heart, an update on the Gift from the Heart Outreach Dental Centre. Ms. Woods.
Just kidding. Thank you, Worship and council members. Thank you for having me here tonight. It's my pleasure to present and give you some information and the opportunity to ask any questions along the way. Next slide, please. So who is Gift from the Heart? Well, let's just do a quick reminder. There we go. So Gift from the Heart is a Canadian nonprofit organization. What we do is we try to find solutions to how to access emergency and preventative oral health care for the residents of not only the Bay Quinte, but Brighton as well. Next slide. So what are some of the problems that we face accessing oral health care? One of them is lack of finances. Many Canadians do not have dental insurance. It is a thing of the past in a lot of places. They cannot access dental care, or they're likely to forgo or delay essential dental treatment. Also, the geographic location for those who live in main urban centers or even smaller towns, they can take for granted the access to care that comes with the territory. For 18.9% of Canadians who live in rural communities, there is an additional layer of challenge that comes with securing access to the dental facilities that we all need. And there's a lot of talk around the unwillingness to take government insurance. The Ontario Dental Association did a survey within the last 3 years asking their members, who accepted government assisted programs like Ontario Disability or Ontario Works. And it's sort of not startling, but startling in some way that 87% of the dental owned, whether it's corporately owned or privately owned dental clinics, do not accept Ontario Works or Ontario Disability. The reason stated most commonly was that they lose money on those clientele or those patients. They're not making money. Remember, dentistry is a business. And the other one is fear. There's a lot of previous experiences that people harbor that do leave permanent scars. Some people have never been to a dentist because they've grown up in a household where a lot of talk was around, if you don't brush your teeth, this is going to happen. So those scars can start, very, very young at age. Next slide, please. So what are some of the solutions? What can we do to change the the landscape of what's going on? Well, Gift from the Heart's idea was to provide locations in small rural areas or municipalities such as Brighton to help meet those needs out there. So provide treatment for all underserviced residents, not to look at financial as their number one. So, we don't collect their financial data. We realize that if they're coming to us, we really are the last resort. Think outside the box of ways that we can provide quality oral health care that our residents can afford. And at the end, make it simple. That's the number one thing that we're trying to do, is to make and help to navigate. So there's a lot of programs out there. We have public health, we have the community health centers, we have government assisted programs, but at the end of the day, people can't navigate them. They have no idea, where they can go for help. I took a call before I walked over, and I could really actually just say, hey, this office is much closer in Colborne. They take that insurance. Call them first. So we do have, there's 2 full-time employees, one being myself and one being Janet, who is our program coordinator. She fields all the emails that come through, all the phone calls, and helps them to navigate. Number one, we're not there, as some people will say, taking patients away from dental offices locally. The people coming to us have no intentions of seeing or can afford to go to the local dentist in the area. So we really do, with the limited number of services that we have, we are the last resort, but we want them to all feel that they're all equal and deserve the care. Next slide, please. So if you haven't been across there, that is the clinic space. So we are unique in itself in that we are designed to provide emergency oral health care. What is that? Well, mainly extractions and broken fillings. It's anything to get somebody out of pain. And we've been testing it now for 6 months, believe it or not, since that opening. We've had our doors open. And I just wanted to sort of give you some stats about what we've been doing. I know there was a little reluctance about, why we would be asking for $20,000 and what were we going to do with that. So I just want to be here to sort of explain to you, how we've been spending that money so wisely. Next slide, please. So I want to show you that I know it's a little bit different in the breakdown where I would have done it, but this comes from our stats on our computer, that 40% of the people, and that's probably because of the geographic location of the outreach dental clinic being in Brighton, that 40% of the people that we've provided care to have come from this area. Quinte West is broken down to be Frankfurt and surrounding area, and then Trenton is actually the town of Trenton, and then Belleville, and the other 3% is from the Picton. Again, that comes from transportation. It's not easy for people that live in the county to get here. It's still a barrier. So we are looking to have our second location, which will help solve a lot of that transportation issues. So let's go down to the last slide here and talk about the cost. So I'm going to give you an update because that's no longer $39, but we're up to $56,454 that we've been able to give back. We've seen about 150 people. So if we do the math at 40%, That's about 60 residents of Brighton and themselves that have a Brighton address have been served at $22,581.60. So that's a lot of care that's been provided in a short amount of time, considering some of the obstacles that we have. So currently, we have over 50 people waiting on our wait list right now that are in pain. So right now, we only have 10 hours a month of dental care being provided. We have one dentist, Dr. Hardik Patel from Trenton, that's giving us 6 hours a month after work. He's coming over and he does that at no cost. Through the goodness of his heart, he's doing that. But I have not been able to get anybody else that will do it at that cost. So right now they're expecting a stipend of $75 an hour, a dentist, and $25 an hour for a dental hygienist. So it does burn through a lot of money pretty quickly, but it's even finding the personnel. So we do have a Trenton dentist as well, a new grad that's coming in and giving us 4 hours a month. I'm sorry, that's not really going to solve our problems. We're not going to be able to see enough people. And being my job and trying to do dental hygiene on weekends, again, is a bit of a concern as well. There's no free time left at the end of every week. So we are doing our best. I'm hoping to change that with a little bit more public awareness that what our needs are. And right now, we need some of our local dentists to step up and to help us out to get some of the work through all these. So just a little bit again. So again, at this rate, we're not going to really get through that, but I do want to share a success story with you. So next slide, please. In the audience today, we do have Courtney, and I think you're all familiar with Courtney. So Courtney started off, as a child suffering from an inner cleft palate, which did do a lot of destruction over the years to her teeth, where she wasn't able to maintain them. And so she lost a lot of her teeth and was not able to put that beautiful smile forward. And let's face it, when you have a smile that's interrupted that way, it does affect so much more than just what we see on the outside. There's a lot of internal things that we deal with as well. And I had met and connected with a lab in Ajax called Glass Canvas, who generously donated the new denture for her. And Dr. Hardik Patel did part of the extractions and has done the post-op checks for her as well and helped to do some things. So this is why we do what we do. This is the reason. We want young entrepreneurs like Courtney to have a very successful life in our community. Because if we can keep people healthy and out of pain, then they're contributing to us, to our town, our city, our municipality. And that's why we're doing what we do. No one should ever have to suffer with dental pain. So I wanted to share Courtney's success story with you. There's a difference, the sparkles in her eyes in both of them, but definitely she has a beautiful smile to go with it now. So thank you for coming, Courtney, and allowing me to share your story. Don't change the slide yet. Go back. Thank you. I do want to say, however, there's been a few hiccups along the way with Gift from the Heart. My administrative assistant left in August with no warning and took a full-time position with public health. Wish I could have offered her that too, but I couldn't. So that with our fundraising efforts for September 22nd for Amazing Race, unfortunately, our ask for the $20,000 community fund did not get out. I did bring our whole application form with you. If there's any money left in the budget, as there was this past year, I'd love for us to be considered for funding, but I will leave that all with Linda. There's 4 copies as requested of everything. And then we'll just flip over and I'll be able to hand these out as well to the last slide. The Amazing Race. You all know what it is. That's our major fundraiser. So this is the 3rd annual coming up on Friday, September the 13th. And with your permission, we'd like to spotlight Brighton this year. We'd like to host the whole event in Brighton. So that's what I'm asking is if you would be, I did speak to your Apple Fest committee. I talked to Ben to ensure that I had the right weekend, that we would be the weekend prior to Apple Fest. So we're not on the same weekend. I know that is happening on October the 18th. I believe their last committee meeting to ensure the dates and everything. I think he said he would know after the 18th. So anyways, so what's the Amazing Race? What are we going to do? Well, that's how we generate our funds that weekend to help pay for staffing and other things that we need. So what we're proposing is we want to highlight places that people don't even know about in Brighton. We want those to be the pit stops. We need your support as far as either, as well as registering a team, get all involved, get a team out there, but encourage businesses to be a pit stop or to sponsor a challenge. We do have your own Anne Butwell, who's sitting on the planning committee for this year's Amazing Race. It will be starting the same thing at Dibbets Landscape Supply, and then the teams will go out from there. So they're teams of 4. They have to solve the clues, find the pit stops, play the games, try to finish in first, second, and third. Last year, we're hoping it's the same. Joe Dibbets will be supplying the cash prizes. First place will be $5,000, second place is $3,000, and third prize is $2,000. So it's quite exciting, but this is our only and major fundraising that we do every year. So I will leave copies of this so that you have copies as well. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the Gift from the Heart Outreach Clinic? I will tell you that our trailer, how exciting is this, will be ready at the end of the month, end of October. Mayor, you'll be invited to the unveiling, which is just getting in place. It'll be at Loyalist College, indoors at that point. The trailer itself will be inside. And we're hoping for Wednesday, November the 29th. So I will be in touch with you as soon as I have all the details for the unveiling of that trailer. But that will make it will live. Its permanent location is in Belleville at Loyalist College, but it has the ability then to be moved. It's generated a generator inside and everything is set up to go so that with a sterilizer and x-rays and so forth. So that's one of the other things. We have to pay for x-rays right now at all the local dentists, thousands of dollars to get an x-ray taken for our patients to take teeth out for them. So there's been a lot of costs that we thought would be gifted in kind to us going forward. I was that whole Kevin Costner, fill the dreams, you build it, they'll come. Not so much. Anyways, any questions anybody has?
Well, you built it and they came, but there was costs involved.
Yeah.
You weren't ready for, so that's
Yeah.
good for you for the work you're doing. And I'll open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification. You shouldn't.
Yeah. You have a conflict of interest.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have
Yeah.
a question. Which members of council are going to be on the
team?
Amazing Race team?
Let's have that conversation
Later, yeah. You have to come up with a theme,
as we
right?
approach summer.
And costumes and all that stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of fun that people will get really excited. They get out there and they decorate and there's lots of fun prizes and a barbecue and fireworks and it's fun. It's a great day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Bev. Motion is moved by Councillor Wielden, seconded by, I'll need a seconder. Councillor Rowley, or Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley. That council receive the presentation from Bev Woods, Gift from the Heart update on GFTH Outreach Dental Centre, utilization of $20,000 grant and announcement of the Amazing Race 2024. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Our next presentation comes from Rhonda Bateman, the CAO of the Lower Trent Conservation Authority with regard to a proposed memorandum of understanding. CAO Bateman, it's nice to see you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's great to be back. I think my last trip here was May 16th or so. And I'm sure you don't remember anything of what I said at that point. So I get to repeat myself a little bit this evening. So as the slides go, memorandum of understanding, be the second slide, please. Why do we need them? What are the program categories and what kind of programs and services do we offer? Next slide. Under Ontario Regulation 686-21, the identification of mandatory programs and services was, excuse me, passed, and Ontario Reg 687-21 transition plans and agreements for programs and services under section 21.1.2 of the Conservation Authorities Act delegated CAs to develop MOUs or agreements with the municipalities for certain programs and services. So the categories of programs and services are next. Category 1 is mandatory. Category 2 are what they call municipal. And category 3 are watershed benefiting. So I'm going to go through those categories. Next slide. Category 1, mandatory. That's our risks of natural hazards. Things like dynamic beaches, erosion hazards, flood hazards, hazard lands, hazardous sites, and low water and drought conditions. Areas under the influence of these natural hazards are wetlands, river valleys, stream valleys, Great Lakes and inland lakes, shorelines, and unstable soils or bedrocks. And the programs that actually fall under the natural heritage are flood forecasting and warning, drought low water response, ice management, which we don't do, but it's in the regulation if necessary. Infrastructure, so that's operations and asset management of our flood and erosion control infrastructure. Plan review comments, our permitting, and our administration and enforcement of the act itself. Enabling and of course, provincial surface water monitoring program and the groundwater monitoring program, the source protection authority and the rules under the Clean Water Act, and our enabling services. Enabling services is basically corporate services and things that are not attributable to a single program area. So things like corporate services, fleet vehicles, asset management, that kind of thing. So next is our municipal services. So these are services that are required to be supplied by the municipality. However, municipality have an option to give those category 2 services to conservation authorities to actually implement. So on the list there's the risk management official, inspector, and the source protection education outreach program. Those are programs that we already have an agreement for. So this would be an extension of those. Flood and erosion control infrastructure is a new one for us. However, it does not apply to Brighton because excuse me, the flood and erosion control, Brighton itself does not own any flood and erosion control infrastructure. So what we do for what we're going to do for 3 of our municipalities, and we have been doing in the past, is actually doing inspections and reporting on the state of their flood and erosion infrastructure. So category 3 watersheds. These are watershed benefiting programs, and we're talking basically about local water monitoring. I'll get into that in a little more detail. Our youth education program and our stewardship and outreach program. So our programs and services, next slide, our programs and services inventory had to be developed to categorize these. So this is just a capture of that. And as you see, the flood and erosion control infrastructure is crossed off there. So category 2 programs and services in a little bit more detail, but not too much because I don't want to bore you to death. Again, the risk management official, we have had this position in place for the past 8 years under agreement. It's with 5 of our municipalities. The one municipality that one of our larger municipalities has their own risk management official for the municipality, not through the CA. And the other one has no source protection under Lower Trent because their drinking water sources actually are in the Quinte Conservation Authority. So we have these existing 5 agreements with, so I'll say with everybody but Quinte West and Center Hastings. So those are the tasks of the risk management official. Section 57 prohibition, risk management plans, and restricted land use. So there, as I said, the municipality has the option to delegate this authority to another body. And as I said, those agreements have been in place for the past 8 years. The next slide, please, is the source protection education. Under the Trent Source Protection Plan, there's a requirement for the municipalities to conduct education and outreach to, to provide to homeowners, business owners, especially those who are in vulnerable areas for drinking water source protection. Again, we've had this agreement in place for the past 8 years. It's basically a quarter of an FTE for that position. And flip over again to category 3, because these are all the new ones. I'm not going to say new to everybody. So surface water, base flow, benthic monitoring, and stream temperature is our local water monitoring. And if you switch to the next slide, please. So in 2018, this slide illustrates it's a 5-year report on water quality in our watershed. And as you can see, all those gray areas, there was no information for. So gray does not look good when we're reporting on the health of our watershed. So the dark green is a score of a B, and the light green is a score of a C. So as a result of seeing this report, the board at the time increased our sampling capabilities to include the entire watershed area. So next slide, please. So since 2019, the sampling map shows locations throughout the watershed. Because the board initiated this sampling, it does not fall under it. It's a watershed-wide program, but it was not requested through our municipalities. So it becomes a category 3 because it is something that does benefit the entire watershed. So if we can look at the next slide, this is our map from 2023 watershed report card, 5 years after we initiated all that planning. We now have data on all of the watersheds. As I said before, the very bright green is a B and the lighter green is a C. So we have data from all of our watersheds, and you can see, if you remember what the other one looked like, there has been an increase in grade in a couple of our watersheds, which is excellent news. So why do we do this? The entire watershed is now being analyzed, and the benefits of this program is knowing the health status of our waters. If funding becomes available for water quality improvement programs, then we would know where to focus our energies and prioritize funding based on those scores. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide, please. Talk about youth education. Youth education includes for us, it's all hands-on youth education. We go to schools. We conduct the Tri-County, we conduct it, but we also coordinate the Tri-County Children's Water Festival that enables over 1,000 local students, parents, teachers, and volunteers to actually go to hands-on stations and learn all about the environment and water, especially source water. It's called the Tri-County because obviously they're from Northumberland and Hastings and Prince Edward County. They come, we work in conjunction with Trent Conservation, and their staff come, the number of volunteers and so many different environmental organizations join us, health units, fire services, all kinds of places. So these programs traditionally have been made possible through donations and sponsorships and grants. As COVID taught us, these sources are not stable in the long term. However, we were fortunate to have several years of significant donations to build on, to build our youth education program on. So what we're doing is seeking long-term stability for the program through the a request for a 0.5 FTE. But the remainder of all the operating expenses for the youth education can be taken from monies donated to date. We still have a few annual sponsors for the Children's Water Festival, so that helps keep us on an even keel when it comes to expenses. Next is stewardship and outreach. So our stewardship and outreach, basically, we are promoting environmental stewardship to the public. We have our annual native plant sale. I don't know how many people have come through our doors for the native plant sale. We have 2 days in the early spring where we distribute plants, and then 2 days later in the spring when we do our wildflowers. We are a planting delivery agent for the Forests Ontario 50 Million Tree Program, and we do have public seminars, hikes, and adult education. We just had several seminars, one being a compost workshop that happened on last Saturday, just up the road, actually. So stewardship is complementary to our natural hazards program when it encourages soil stability and erosion control and flood retention. It's related to our invasive species eradication and naturalization programs on our own properties. And the costs for these programs are partially funded by fees charged for the activities. So we have developed a new, the programs that we used to have, people could attend for free. Now we're charging them so that at least we get the cost of materials and that sort of thing back. So we're asking for a 0.2 FTE to carry on this program. And last slide. So I appreciate this opportunity to present our MOUs for programs and services to Brighton. And I hope you'll agree that our programs and services are important to Brighton and the entire watershed as a whole.
Thank you, CAO Bateman. We appreciate the information. I will note that there is a staff report 10.2 discussing the memorandum of understanding, but I will open the floor to questions of clarification from members of council. And it looks like there are none. So
Okay, thank you.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council receive the presentation from Rhonda Bateman, CAO, Lower Trent Conservation Authority, regarding the proposed memorandum of understanding. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments? That brings us to staff reports. First report is with regard to the Intermunicipal Working Group Homelessness and Housing Initiatives. Madam Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council received the staff report, Intermunicipal Working Group Homelessness and Housing Initiatives, and further that council appoint 2 council members for an intermunicipal working group that will participate in an informal roundtable discussion between municipalities and to provide recommendations on the current priorities of homelessness support system review and other housing and homelessness initiatives. Is it your intent that we would, through this motion, be appointing those 2 members of council? To members of council, I will ask you if you have any questions or comments on the motion, and I hope at least one of those comments is who we are appointing. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I volunteer.
That's one. No, I do not. I want to fill in the blanks here. We'll just add it to the motion. Councillor Butwell,
I will volunteer to sit with Councillor Wheeldon as well.
are there any objections to that? Councillor Fredis and Councillor Butwell, are you okay if I add that to this motion?
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
the report also includes the fact that this is at least at this point, a less formal working group rather than a committee. And so the bar is a little bit lower in terms of what is expected of us, because we haven't yet decided. Doing something new.
You may.
Yeah, Councillor Wheeldon, and I just got notice from Nancy McDonald for A&H that they passed a motion and they appointed a council member. So I think with the clerks, what they're trying to do, or the other council members, is just get together and put something together and then have the ad hoc committee. So yeah, it's not that it's not going to go through. They just want to get together and formalize things. Yeah.
So I've added the words "and further that council appoints Councillor Wheeldon and Councillor Butwell to the working group." Councillor Fredis, you're okay with that as a mover? Councillor Butwell as a seconder? Is there any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, the motion's carried. Next report is the Lower Trent Conservation Authority Memorandum of Understanding for Category 2 and Category 3 services. CAO Castleman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that Council authorize the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Lower Trent Conservation Authority for the provision of Category 2 and Category 3 services as depicted in Schedule 1 attached here 2. Is there any discussion? Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley.
I'm assuming that this will be part of the 2024 budget, or is this something that will start now?
CAO,
The agreement is proposed to start January 1st of next year. Certainly, this will be part and parcel of the 2024 budget.
That said, CAO, if we execute the agreement today, are we not binding ourselves through the budget process?
The answer is no. The majority of the budget is associated with Category 1 program and services.
Thank you. And the clerk advises that she'd need to bring a bylaw forward anyways, which would happen post-budget, I assume. Thank you. The shaking of the head was yes, just for everybody's information. That's okay. I could translate. Is there anything further? All in favor? There being none opposed, the motion's carried. We have two motions that were notices of motion at our last meeting, and Councillor Fredis, I asked if you wanted to read these and you said it was okay for me to. Thank you. So they are moved by Councillor Fredis and seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley. Whereas the Highway Traffic Act has been amended to permit automated speed enforcement systems by municipalities, and whereas the municipality has enacted an administrative monetary penalty system, and whereas private sector organizations are available to assist with the capital and operational aspects of automated speed enforcement. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the council direct staff to investigate an automated speed enforcement system for Brighton, and further that a report for automated speed enforcement be brought forward for budget deliberations. Councillor Fredis, this is your motion. Would you like to speak to it?
To the chair, thank you. Automated speed enforcement seems to be a growing trend in municipalities across Ontario. And I think we've all learned during the campaign cycle that speed and speeding is an issue to the residents of Brighton. I think we've all heard it repeatedly, and it's not unique to us. I found it interesting. It's not only, I guess, a source of revenue, but hopefully it will over time start to reshape behavior of drivers. That having been said, I note in Ottawa, for example, they now have 17 fixed photo radar installations. And last year they mailed out $9 million worth of tickets. So it comes out to about $500,000 per unit, which seems to be kind of the going average for most municipalities. I think we need to do something to try and reshape the behavior, but certainly we could use the revenue. The other interesting thing to note is there is no real penalty to the driver other than the speeding fine, because it's attached to the vehicle. There are no demerit points involved, nor is there any record on the driver's insurance, driver's license. So it shouldn't impact their insurance. If there are any other questions you'd like to ask, I'll try and field them.
Is there anyone who would like to speak against the motion? Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I'm definitely in favor of taking a look at this, getting a staff report. I really like the idea of having traffic enforcement be something that is more automated, fewer people being pulled over. It's a recipe for confrontation often, but so I like that approach. Ultimately, I think we need to, and this is happening with the Prince Edward redesign. We're seeing the design speed of the road being reduced by having slightly narrower lanes, protected bike lanes, things like that, that signal to a driver that they should drive slower. sometimes some of our roads are really designed almost as wide as highways, and people drive on them as such. So I think long-term, lowering the design speed of the road is the way to go, but this is a good interim step, and I'm for it.
Thank you. Councillor Fredis.
I agree with Councillor Wielden. However, one of the streets that was looked at in the little study that I did was Cedar Street, and I don't think you could define it as one designed for high speed. But in 1 year there, my calculations of the fines was a couple of $100,000, and people doing in excess of 85 in a 50 zone on a street that has poor sidewalks and little kids. So I'm not sure. Hopefully road reconfiguration and redesign will do something to mitigate the issue. But based on that one street, I have my reservations. I think Harbor Street is another classic example. And Baldwin Street of all places. I mean, in one of the Black Cat studies that was shared with me by the director, and we did the analysis, would have generated something like $300,000 in 1 year. So we have a speeding issue that I think we need to try and address. But I hope you're right, Councillor Wielden, that some reconfiguration of road designs and stuff will help mitigate some of this going forward.
And certainly, we hope to see that kind of thing come out of our transportation master plan when it gets resolved and brought forward to council. But a good stopgap measure in terms of speed control. At the end of the day, I like that it's a revenue driver for the municipality for people who aren't behaving in ways we would like to see them behave. And I frankly, if we move forward with something like this, wouldn't hesitate to say, when I'm accused of a cash grab, wouldn't hesitate to say, absolutely. It will be nice to drive revenue from a source that isn't the property taxpayer's pocket directly. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Fredis. Having spent quite a bit of time the last few years in Ottawa, I can embarrassingly say I've been caught by one of those, and I will never speed again in that section. So it absolutely will change behavior. It just takes one ticket. It hurts. It really hurts because I'm a rule follower, if you guys know. It hurts, and I see that this will be a great tool for us to use to change behavior.
Go ahead, Councillor Fredis.
Councillor Bevel, I'm sorry you got caught by the systems in Ottawa, but what I found intriguing in studying their situation is they have fixed systems, and I'm envisioning us using a mobile system and kind of moving it around to address the trouble spots. And a fixed system is going to capture repeat traffic, but they're up to $9 million in tickets. People aren't learning the lesson in Ottawa. Now, maybe it's all the government people who are late for work or something, I'm not sure. But it doesn't seem to be modifying some of their behaviors. It certainly is for tourists and out-of-towners, but the locals don't seem to want to catch the lesson.
Well, a socioeconomic discussion for another day, perhaps, from the city of Ottawa. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Fredis, would you like to close out with any statement as the mover? No, thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next motion is moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, whereas the Ontario Court of Appeal held that the City of Kingston may rely on the Municipal Act to enact bylaws imposing fees based on the capital cost for installing water and sanitary sewer infrastructure. And whereas the Ontario Court of Appeal found that the City of Kingston has multiple sources of power to impose fees to recover capital costs, that it is not compelled to rely on the Development Charges Act. Now therefore be it resolved that the council directs staff to investigate the inclusion of impost fees for the 2024 budget, and further that a report for fees be brought forward for budget deliberations. Councillor Fredis, as the mover, would you like to speak to this motion?
To the chair, thank you. I guess what we're all well aware of from the CAO on a couple of occasions now is that our wastewater system, predominantly, I guess to some extent, our water system is going to take many millions of dollars to address. And with Bill 23 and the reduction in development charges, we're obviously in dire need of some funding sources to help address those upgrades. And what Kingston was able to determine and successfully won both in the lower court and the appeals court is that the Municipal Act grants them the authority to establish the impost fees from new developments to make a contribution to the capital cost for infrastructure upgrades. It is the same authority in the Act that allows us to apply user fees for water and wastewater to existing residents. It's the same legislative authority. And, you know, I've done some crude calculations, and assuming that the unbuilt portions of some of the developments going back to last year participate through an impost fee, we could generate upwards of $6 to $8 million towards our capital costs. It's not an insignificant sum of money, and takes some of the burden off of existing ratepayers and taxpayers, particularly in light of the reductions imposed in development charges imposed by Bill 23. So I would hope that we would go this way for the benefit of the municipality to ensure that we have access to the capital to do the upgrades we need.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? Questions or comments for members of council? Councillor Fredis, would you like to conclude with any statement? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have nothing listed under unfinished business this evening. We have one bylaw with a motion moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a use agreement between Justin Harrington and Adam Harrington, owners and the municipality of Brighton regarding the access of materials from a licensed pit in Lot 3 and Lot 4, Concession 5. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to reports, minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. We have a few. First is a recommendation from sustainability. It's moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that as recommended by the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, council directs staff to add monies to the 2024 budget for a Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative membership for council to consider during budget deliberations. Is there any discussion? I'd just like council know that I attended the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee specifically to speak to this membership application. We have been the net benefit of some of the work that that group has done, especially during the 2017-2019 flooding years. And in the spirit of eating our own dog food, if you will, I would like Brighton to become a member of this group and pay our way back. They're doing some really good work, not just from the flooding point of view, but from overall environmental sustainability on the lakeshore. And it provides us some pretty good tools with what's happening south of the border as well. And those folks seem to get a lot more attention from their federal government, and it would be nice to figure out how we can do the same. I'm not sure in our system of government it will work, but it's always nice to try. So is there any further discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And again, from Environmental Sustainability, it's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that is recommended by the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. Council directs staff to carry over the staff salaries and benefits line items of the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee budget to the 2024 budget and increase the line item to an appropriate amount for the implementation of the strategic plan with regards to environmental sustainability. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell. Sorry, this brings us to the Committee of the Whole Procedure Bylaw Review of October 11th. Council adopt the October 11th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. A recommendation from Rural Advisory. It's moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that as recommended by the Rural Advisory Committee, Council directs staff to post 60-kilometer speed limit signs on Bowes Road. And further, that Council directs staff to bring a report regarding possible traffic safety control lights and or other safety measures for the bridge underpass on Bowes Road. Is there any discussion? I'm just going to ask staff if part 2 of this motion would form something that the consultant for the Transportation Master Plan will be undertaking.
Yes, I think it is a very good idea. We note the safety concerns there, and safety is a priority for the community. I think we've done that in many instances, and this is something that we'll bring forward.
Okay, thank you, Director Whitman. Appreciate that. Any other discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a recommendation from Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. It's moved back to Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell. That is recommended by the Justice, Equity. This reads equality, but it's equity. Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Council directs staff to establish a budget for the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee with the typical honorarium line items, along with a line item for training conferences with $1,500 and a line item for events with $6,000. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council receive the minutes of the Community Events and Civic Awards Advisory Committee as presented. Is there any discussion? Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just bring your attention to item 6.4 of these minutes regarding civic awards and maybe the volunteer recognition for 2024. Although this is not a mandate for the Community Events Committee, some members are interested in this, and we would like to have consideration at budget time as well. We'll speak. We're not sure, Mr. Hagerman, if it was through your budget or did we speak about it for general government?
Mr. Hagerman.
Through the chair, it's definitely going to not be through my budget. I think if the community comes up with some sort of a volunteer recognition event, it should probably be done through general government and have a council face to it. But that would be my recommendation.
We can park this, or we could refer. There is a recommendation, right? Coming at the next one. But that's to that's for the proposed community events budget.
That's for community events. That doesn't include this item.
That said, that next motion is recommended that we refer it to budget deliberations. So I would suggest when we talk community events at budget time, the two council representatives, remember to bring up the volunteer recognition event. And we'll endeavor to get some monies into the budget for that purpose. Okay. We can do it at budget deliberations and it will go through council. That's what I'm saying. I see what you're saying. So we can do that at that time. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Should I ask again? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Yeah, because with one in favor and everybody else not, it doesn't pass. That brings us to the recommendation from Community Events and Civic Awards. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis. So the recommendation from the Community Events and Civic Awards Advisory Committee approve the 2024 proposed budget as presented, and further that the Community Events and Civic Awards Advisory Committee recommend this document proceed to Council for review during the 2024 budget deliberations. And I'll ask if there's any comment or question on the motion, but I would suggest that instead of approving, we receive it and then put it forward to budget deliberations. Because if we approve it, theoretically, there's nothing to then talk about. So as the mover, Councillor Butwell, you okay with that? Councillor Fredis? Thank you. So we'll receive and recommend the document proceed to council deliberations. Questions or comments from members of council? Those in favor? There being none opposed, the motion's carried. A motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council receive the June 27th, 2023 Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Rural Advisory, it's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council received the July 6, 2023 Rural Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to reports and minutes of statutory boards, statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The only one before us this evening is the Brighton Public Library, and it's moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council received the June 28th, 2023 Brighton Public Library meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Should have done this under announcements, but I will say that the library held a 5th anniversary reno anniversary. That today was the day that they opened the library 5 years ago after the renovations. There was cake and coffee and much celebration, so it was fun. You did? You missed the cake. Anything on the motion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, the motion's carried. We have nothing listed under correspondence, direction items, endorsements, or communications or petitions. We have one item under FYI correspondence. It's the update from Northumberland County. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis. The council received as information the October 2nd to 13th, 2023 updates from Northumberland County. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to question period. Is there anyone in the gallery who has a question with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda? And we have no one joining us on Zoom for that purpose. We have no closed session this evening. So I have a motion for a confirmatory bylaw moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on October 16th, 2023. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And finally, A motion that the October 16th, 2023 council meeting adjourn at 7:33 PM. Is there any discussion? Oh, sorry, it's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you, everyone, and drive safely home, except for those who already are.